voice was firm as I spoke. "I know exactly what I saw, and I know how you've been treating the women in this office." He chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound. "You are just jealous, Jane. Jealous because you are not the one I'm interested in." A surge of anger rose within me, but I kept my cool. "I'm not jealous, sir. I'm just tired of your games and the way you are treating us like objects, not people." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with anger. "You are just an employee, Jane. You'll do as you are told, and if you don't like it, you can leave." I stood my ground, my heart pounding. "I'm not going anywhere, sir. I'm not going to let you bully me or anyone else in this office." He sneered at me, but I saw the fear behind his eyes. He knew I had him cornered. Just then, the door opened and the receptionist walked in with a smug look on her face. "Sorry to interrupt, sir, but you have a meeting with the investors in 10 minutes. Mr. Xavier's expression changed to smooth and calm once again. "Thank you, Emily. Jane, we'll continue this conversation later." I nodded, my heart still racing. I knew I had won this round, but the war was far from over. As I left his office, I felt a surge of determination. I was going to take him down, no matter what it took. The next day, he cornered me in the office break room. Charming and charismatic, his eyes locked on mine. "Jane, I know I've made mistakes, but I promise to make it up to you. Let me take you out for dinner, just the two of us. I'll show you a good time." I shook my head, trying to stay firm. "No, Mr. Xavier, I mean it. I am not interested." He smiled, his eyes glinting with determination. "I'll weigh you down, Jane. You'll see. I always get what I want." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me feeling uneasy and unsure of what to expect. His persistence grew in the following days. He showed up at my desk with small gifts and tokens, always finding ways to be near me. I tried to stay strong, but it was wearing me down. I couldn't deny the attraction I felt, and I started to wonder if maybe I was wrong about him. He began leaving small gifts on my desk, sending thoughtful messages, and finding excuses to touch my hand or shoulder. His tactics were subtle, yet effective, making me laugh and feel at ease. I felt like he was slowly closing in on me. One day, as we worked late on a project, he offered to drive me home. I hesitated, but he insisted, and I found myself agreeing. As we drove through the city, he talked about his own dreams and fears. A connection formed, and when he dropped me off at my doorstep, his eyes lingered on mine for a moment too long. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was in trouble. I was starting to fall for my boss. The lines between professionalism and personal connection blurred. He called me into his office to discuss work, but our conversations veered into personal topics. He asked about my family, friends, and interests, and I found myself opening up to him, sharing things I never thought I'd share with my boss. One evening, he offered to take me out for dinner to celebrate a job well done. I hesitated, knowing it was a bad idea, but he persisted and I agreed. As we sat down at the restaurant, I realized it was a date, and I was both thrilled and terrified. The dinner was a whirlwind of laughter and deep conversation. Mr. Xavier was charming, witty, and attentive, making me feel like the only person in the world. After dinner, as he walked me out of the restaurant, He took my hand. "Thank you for tonight, Jane. I've had a wonderful time getting to know you better." I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body as I looked into his eyes. This was the moment I had been avoiding and fearing, yet I couldn't help but feel drawn to him. "Let's do it again sometime," he said, his voice low and husky. I nodded, my heart racing with excitement and anticipation. I knew I was in trouble, but I couldn't help myself. I was falling for my boss. The following days were a blur of confusion and excitement. I couldn't stop thinking about the dinner date and the way Mr. Xavier made me feel. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to him. One day, as I was about to leave his office, he turned to me. "Jane, can I talk to you for a moment?" My heart skipped a beat as I nodded, my mind racing with possibilities. "Let's take a walk," he said, his eyes sparkling with intensity. We walked out of the office, into the bright sunlight and down the bustling street. He didn't say a word, but I could feel his eyes on me. We turned a corner into a quieter alley, and he finally spoke. "Jane, I have to tell you something. I've been wanting to say this for a long time, but couldn't find the right moment. I'm in love with you, Jane." His words hung in the air like a challenge. I know it's complicated. I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Mr. Xavier," I started, trying to sound professional, but my voice trembled. "Call me Alexander," he said, his eyes flashing with intensity. "We're beyond formalities now, Jane." He took my hand, his touch sending shivers down my spine. "Let's take a chance, Jane. Let's see where this takes us." I looked into his eyes and knew I was in trouble. I wanted to take a chance, to see where this would go. I wanted to feel alive, wanted, and loved. But as he pulled me close, I couldn't shake off the fear that I was just another conquest, another notch on his belt. Alexander was a womanizer, a charming and ruthless seducer. I had seen the way he operated and toyed with women's emotions. "No, Alexander," I said firmly, pushing him away. "I won't fall for it again. I won't be another notch on your belt." He looked at me, surprised and anger flashing across his face. "What are you talking about, Jane?" "Your games, Alexander," I said, my voice rising. "Your lies, manipulation, and selfless desires. You haven't changed. You are still the same man who broke my heart." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, his eyes blazing with anger and desire. I knew in that moment I had made the right decision, choosing to protect myself from the heartache he would surely bring. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had just made a powerful enemy and wondered what he would do next. The next few weeks were tense. Alexander's presence loomed over me like a dark cloud. He was no longer charming and attentive. Instead, he became cold and distant. He stopped leaving gifts on my desk and avoided any personal interaction. I could feel his eyes on me during meetings, but he never approached me directly. It was like he was plotting something, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One morning, as I walked into the office, I found a note on my desk. It was a simple piece of paper with a short message, written in Alexander's elegant handwriting. "Meet me in the conference room at noon. We need to talk." My heart raced as I read the note. What did he want now? At noon, I made my way to the conference room. my stomach in knots. Alexander was already there, sitting at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and sat down across from him, determined to keep my composure. "Jane," he began, his voice low and measured. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I realized that I made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What do you mean?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I've been a terrible boss. I've treated you and the other women in this office poorly, and I'm truly sorry. I want to make things right." I studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. "And how do you plan to do that?" He leaned forward, his eyes sincere. "I want to implement new policies to ensure a safe and respectful work environment for everyone. I want to make this office a place where people feel valued and respected." I was taken aback. This was not what I had expected. "And why should I believe you, Alexander?" He looked down, his expression pained. "Because I care about you, Jane, more than you'll ever know. And I care about this company. I don't want to lose either." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he had changed. Maybe he was sincere. But I couldn't let my guard down completely. "I'll believe it when I see it," I said finally. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Fair enough." The following weeks brought a noticeable change in the office environment. Alexander followed through on his promises, implementing new policies and holding workshops on workplace respect and equality. He was more approachable, more respectful, and genuinely seemed to be making an effort to change. The tension between us eased, and I started to feel more comfortable around him. One evening, as I was leaving the office, Alexander approached me. "Jane, can I walk you to your car?" I hesitated, but then nodded. We walked in silence for a few moments before he spoke. "I know I have a long way to go to earn your trust, but I hope you can see that I'm trying." I looked at him, his face honest and sincere. "I do see it, Alexander, and I appreciate it." He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made my heart flutter. "Thank you, Jane. That means a lot to me." As we reached my car, he paused. "Would you like to have dinner with me? As friends, nothing more. I just want to spend time with you." I felt a mix of emotions, but decided to give him a chance. "Okay, Alexander. Dinner sounds fine." Dinner was pleasant, filled with light conversation and laughter. Alexander was charming, but this time it felt different. He was genuine, and I found myself enjoying his company. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a spark of something new and hopeful between us. Months passed, and Alexander continued to prove himself as a changed man. Our relationship evolved into a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. The office environment improved, and morale was higher than ever. One afternoon, Alexander called me into his office. "Jane, I need to talk to you about something important." I walked in, curious. "What is it?" He looked serious, his eyes meeting mine. "I've decided to step down as CEO. I believe it's time for a fresh perspective, and I want to focus on my personal growth." I was shocked. "But you've done so much to improve this company. Why now?" He smiled sadly. "Because I need to focus on myself and my relationships. I've realized that power and control were never the answers. It's time for me to step back and let someone else lead." I felt a pang of sadness, but also a deep respect for his decision. I understand, Alexander. I support you. He reached out and took my hand. Thank you, Jane. You've been a huge part of my journey, and I'm grateful for your support. As the weeks passed, Alexander prepared for his departure, and the new CEO was appointed. The office buzzed with excitement and anticipation for the future. Alexander and I remained close, our friendship stronger than ever. On his last day, he called a meeting to address the entire staff. I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work and dedication. This company is in good hands, and I believe it will continue to thrive. Thank you for believing in me and for giving me a chance to make things right. After the meeting, Alexander and I stood in his office, picking up the last of his belongings. So, what's next for you? I asked. He smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. I'm not sure yet. Maybe travel, maybe start a new venture. But whatever it is, I want to do it with integrity and respect. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. I wish you the best, Alexander. He pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. Thank you, Jane, for everything. As we stood there, I realized that this was not the end, but a new beginning. For both of us, the future was uncertain, but I felt a sense of hope and excitement. Alexander had changed, and so had I. And whatever came next, I knew we would face it with strength and determination. As I walked out of the office for the last time, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. For Alexander, for me, and for our friendship. The ending was open, filled with possibilities and the promise of new beginnings. And I was ready to embrace